Were you trying to get crazy with this, eh? Don't you know I'm loco?
No. I know this part. All right, so let's get into it. There's only going to be 2 stories today because both of them are a doozy. Let's dive straight into the first one. We're taking this from Current, and it is 9 PBS sues Iron Mountain over blocked access to archival data. So, a 9 PBS, a St. Louis affiliated PBS station, has filed a lawsuit against the information management company Iron Mountain Data Centers on July 28th, and it is seeking to recover over 50 terabytes of data that includes a lot of things. It includes interviews, videos, news coverage, COVID, the Great Flood of '93, and all sorts of important history for East St. Louis and the surrounding St. Louis area. Going back 70 years, I might add. So the lawsuit has been filed in the District Court of Denver, Colorado, and it says that the station's cloud storage vendor, Open Source Storage, cut off access to their data without warning. There's a little bit more to that. We'll get into it. All right, now Iron Mountain initially was going to give the data back, but I imagine they consulted with their legal team and came to the conclusion that they need to refuse to return the materials to the station because Iron Mountain's client was OSS, Open Source Storage, which was a client of PBS 9. So PBS 9 is not a client of Iron Mountain and vice versa. So on July 28th, they sued. When they got to court, a judge did grant them a preliminary order saying that Iron Mountain would not delete, modify, or overwrite any of the material. In a statement to Current, 9 PBS VP and CCO Leah Freeman confirmed the station's lawsuit against Iron Mountain and its dedication to retrieving the archive materials and programming over 70 years of our organization's history. Yeah, and here they say, according to the lawsuit, the blocked materials include historical items such as the coverage of the history of East St. Louis, COVID-19 pandemic, and the Great Flood of '93, which caused widespread damage along the Mississippi and Missouri rivers. All right, and here's a statement from the spokesperson for Iron Mountain to Current. Iron Mountain never had access to 9 PBS's data, the spokesperson wrote. Iron Mountain provides physical infrastructure, think the building, network connectivity, the power, and other environmental controls. Our customers rent space for their servers and other hardware. These are the client's assets. We don't have access to the data on the hardware or servers because they belong to our customers. So they basically just provide the housing. And they are contractually obligated to not let a third party have access to OSS's servers. Even if OSS is defunct, it could probably still come back and sue Iron Mountain if they just straight up say, okay, PBS, come in, get the data, whatever. Because it's not their servers. They only own the space that the servers are stored in, not the servers themselves. So here's the backstory. In 2019, 9 PBS contracted with a company called OSS, or Open Source Storage, for hardware, software, and cloud storage services. They had renewed the contracts for years, up until 2026, this year. So in February, 1 month before their contract was due to expire, they attempted to contact OSS. OSS apparently didn't respond at all or give any indication that they wanted to renew the contract because they didn't respond. So the agreement was set to expire March 6th, which it did, and they lost access to their data on that date. Now, PBS was relying on the contract that they had with OSS providing an additional 30 days for them to retrieve the data, which would normally be okay, but for the fact that you didn't hear from them for a full month before this happened. So that should have been an indication that something was wrong. But they still had access after they didn't hear from them before the contract expired. So eventually they did discover that the company was gone. The website was down, and they were in delinquency status with the Colorado Secretary of State. Very sketchy. Very sketchy indeed. So they dug a little deeper, and they found out that OSS had a relationship with Iron Mountain. So then 9PBS sent a letter to Iron Mountain saying, "We demand our data. It is ours. It is rightfully ours. We demand it. But we will compensate you for the trouble." So initially, 9PBS then tried to sue OSS and its purported president, Charles Wells. I'd really like to know the details on purported, because that's a particular word to use here. So eventually, they got in contact with this James Trammell guy, James Trammell, and apparently he was a managing partner in the firm that purchased OSS's assets. And he confirmed that the data was still in the Iron Mountain data center. So they stopped freaking out. They're like, "Whew, our data is safe." So after about a month, Mr. Trammell just stopped responding and left them on red.
But this does put a smile on my face.
Then weeks later, they received an automatic email reply saying that he had ceased his association with OSS. Apparently, at this point, according to Current, I'm not sure who found this out, since apparently this company's not communicating with anybody. But at this point, the company's previous owners, including Mr. Charles Wells, Ben Nicholson, and Justine Riri. Now that's an anime name if I've ever seen one. Miss Riri. So evidently they resumed control over OSS operations. Apparently it didn't make a difference, because 9PBS attempted to contact them again without success. So they went back to the St. Louis Circuit Court and got a default judgment against OSS. So the judge in this default judgment informed OSS that they were ordered to get the data back to 9PBS or give it to somebody else who would. So they then, after this default judgment, reached out to Iron Mountain and said that, hey, litigation is in your state, and it would be great if you would just give us the data. Iron Mountain said, okay, we have the data. We would like to avoid court costs. We'd like to avoid dealing with any court BS. So we'll give it back to you. And then I guess they consulted with their legal team and realized that they really couldn't do that, because the servers that the data is stored on is not owned by Iron Mountain. It's owned by OSS, even though only the space rented to house the servers is owned by Iron Mountain, not the servers within that space. So eventually, they were forced to sue Iron Mountain. And that brings us to where we are as of a couple days ago. So, a Denver District Court judge set a process for 9PBS to retrieve its archival data and programming from Iron Mountain data centers during a Wednesday hearing. So the judge, District Court Judge of Colorado in Denver, Eric Elif, which is also an extremely anime name. That's like a Full Metal Alchemist name, straight up. Ordered Iron Mountain to cooperate with 9PBS in any way possible so that they can get their data back. He said that the station is the rightful owner of the data and is entitled to recover them from OSS's systems. He did acknowledge the tricky position Iron Mountain is in, because again, they don't own the data, or they don't own the servers the data is stored on. PBS owns the data, OSS owns the servers. The servers are in a data center that is owned by Iron Mountain, and Iron Mountain rents the space out to OSS. So even though OSS is in default with not only the Colorado Secretary of State, but also Iron Mountain, because they have not been paying Iron Mountain either, Iron Mountain still can't just go in and get that data. And we'll talk about why here in just a minute. So, yeah, it says Iron Mountain is the custodian of 9PBS's data, but it's not the vendor that contracted with the station to store and preserve the data. So that is with OSS. Under this new order, 9PBS is going to pay Iron Mountain the back storage fees that OSS owed Iron Mountain. So Iron Mountain's made whole in that way, because they're kind of an innocent party in this. I would say PBS is innocent, but we'll get into that, why I don't believe they truly are later. Leah Freeman, the CCO and VP of 9 PBS, glazed the judge in the court here. We appreciate the court's thoughtful decision in establishing a path forward to access and recover our archival materials, which the court confirmed that 9 PBS rightfully owns. These archives represent an important part of our region's history, and we look forward to ensuring the preservation and protection through the court-approved process. During the hearing, Gregory Rich, who's the attorney for 9 PBS, said that they want to get into Iron Mountain, to get into the place where all this is stored. And the station is in contact with a former OSS employee who is willing to help obtain the data. So that's good. That's half the battle. They've got somebody who's familiar with the server, who's familiar with OSS's operations. So you can reasonably assume that they'll be able to retrieve 9 PBS's data without screwing up any of the data that may belong to other customers on OSS's servers. So some of the data, they say, may be in videotape form, like physical form, tapes, audio tapes, videotapes, VHS, DVDs, that kind of thing. But I assume that a lot of the data is digital, and the judge assumes that a lot of the data is digital. The attorney for Iron Mountain, William Cravings, basically reiterated that, look, some of it, the physical stuff, we can easily get back to them, but archive materials that's on the servers, that's digitized, may be lumped in with other customers' data. So, at the end of all this, Judge Elif, the Full Metal Alchemist judge, ordered the immediate return of any physical devices, and if it turns out to be more complicated, which invariably it will, or if the data is encrypted, they're going to schedule another hearing to figure out what to do. So they have until September 14th to move along and either get this data retrieved or figure out exactly what hurdles that it's going to take to get this data retrieved. So ultimately, it looks like PBS is going to get their data back. But what I wanted to add, and why I would like to say that PBS is not entirely innocent here, is because this particular PBS station actually makes quite a bit of scratch. So here we have the income for this particular PBS affiliate. You can see in 2022 that they took in a total of $13 million. They had $12 million in expenses. So they netted $700,000, almost $1 million. This investment income, this is income that's just from stocks, bonds, dividends, that sort of thing. So this is like free money for them. This is money that they're making on assets that they already own, okay? So this is basically gravy, okay? And then they have their actual income. So you can see they had a net of almost $1 million in 2022. They lost almost $1 million in 2023. And then they gained $1.7 million in 2024, so that was a good year. This right here, this 2025, this $32 million, that's because they sold off a bunch of assets. So let's ignore the 2025 year, because remember, they've been contracted since 2019. Now, obviously, they didn't lose access till this year, but you'd think that if you're making this kind of money most years, that you could set aside 5 or 10 grand to make your own local storage. There's no excuse for them to not have a local storage, especially considering that on their 990, there is a chief technology officer, Mr. Marlowe, who makes like 200 grand a year. Now you'd think for 200 grand a year, as a chief technology officer, you would be smart enough to think, maybe we shouldn't have 70 years worth of history and data stored on the cloud. Maybe we should have a local backup. You can back this up on a hard drive space that takes up less than like 6 or 7 vertical inches of physical space. So there's no excuse. There's no excuse at all. And I'm just gonna let Mr. Louis Rossman take this away and elucidate this with such eloquence that I don't think I could do as good a job. So, Mr. Rossman, take it away.
First things first here. If you are trying to renew your contract and they are not allowing you to renew your contract for 70 years of your data, the first thing that you fucking do is you run out immediately. You do not pass go, do not collect 200, run to Best Buy, run to Walmart, and grab as many hard drives as you can. Plug them into the computer and start downloading your shit immediately. If you know that you do not have your data anywhere else but one server, one company that is no longer accepting your money or extending your contract, that's a 911 level emergency.